my aunt announced to everyone. I took Grandma's will and burned it, so everything goes to me. I believed her until the lawyer smiled and said, actually, she made a video will. Suddenly, my aunt lost her confident look. I remember my aunt sitting there with a smug look, acting like she had just won the lottery. The whole family was in the lawyer's office, expecting a simple reading of Grandma's will. Grandma had died a few weeks earlier, and although we were sad, the tension in the room was because of Aunt Diane. She always thought she was the smartest, and until then, she had fooled most of us. We were all sitting around a long mahogany table in Mr. Calloway's office. He was Grandma's lawyer, a sharp, old man who had seen a lot. The room smelled of old books and polished wood. Even though the air conditioner was on, I felt a cold sweat on my neck. Diane sat at the head of the table, looking like she was the queen. My mom sat next to me, twisting a tissue with red, teary eyes. My uncle sat across from me, arms crossed tightly. My cousins either stared at their hands or gave Diane side glances, but no one spoke. Then Mr. Calloway cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss your mother's final wishes," he said calmly, making everyone pay attention. That's when Diane declared, "There is no will," with a tone that suggested she had been waiting for this moment. Everyone was confused, even Mr. Calloway frowned. "What do you mean?" asked my uncle. Diane shrugged slowly, as if explaining something obvious. "I mean exactly what I said. Mom had a will, but I found it and destroyed it, I promise." The mood in the room changed instantly. My mom gasped softly, my uncle's jaw tightened, my cousins exchanged wide-eyed looks. Mr. Calloway, not surprised but rather amused, said, "Since there is no will, everything goes to the next of kin. That means it's all mine. I was her main caretaker since she lived with me." I felt sick. Grandma had made her wishes clear. Her house was to be split between my mom and uncle, her savings divided among her grandchildren, and she had specific instructions for her jewelry, antique furniture, and even her wedding ring. Everything was written down, but Diane had burned it. My mom started shaking and whispered, "You had no right." Diane just shrugged. "It doesn't matter. It's gone. Legally, it's all mine." She leaned back, looking very pleased with herself. Then Mr. Calloway did something unforgettable. He smiled a little and said while opening a folder, "Your mother was very thorough." Diane's smirk faded. "What do you mean?" she asked. Mr. Calloway took out a USB drive and placed it on the table. "Your mother made a video will," he said. The room went completely silent. Diane's face turned pale. She opened her mouth but then shut it. My uncle laughed in disbelief, and my mom grabbed my arm, looking as if she couldn't believe it. "I have a recorded video of your mother clearly stating how she wanted her belongings divided," Mr. Calloway continued. "It was signed and witnessed by two neutral people, so it is legally binding in this state. Your little trick means nothing." Diane tried to protest, "You're lying," but her voice lacked confidence. Mr. Calloway didn't reply. Instead, he plugged in the USB drive, pointed the laptop screen at us, and pressed play. There was Grandma, sitting in her favorite chair wearing her soft blue sweater, looking straight into the camera with a firm expression. She said, "If you're watching this, then my daughter Diane has probably done something foolish. Let me be clear, my will is final, and if the paper copy is gone, don't worry, I planned for that." Diane leaned back as if trying to escape the situation. Grandma then listed everything. "The house goes to my mom and uncle. The savings are split among my grandchildren. The heirlooms go exactly as I wanted, and for my daughter Diane, I leave you one thing, a reminder that greed leads nowhere." The room was tense. Diane looked like she might be sick, and Mr. Calloway calmly said, "Well, that settles it." But Diane wasn't finished. In panic, she suddenly stood up so quickly it almost made her fall. "This is fake," she stuttered, pointing at the laptop. She was old. She didn't know what she was saying. Mr. Calloway replied calmly, "The video was recorded with two witnesses who confirmed she was of sound mind. So no, Diane, this is not fake." Diane looked around for help, but no one supported her. My uncle glared at her, my mom looked relieved, and my cousins were shocked. I held the edge of the table tightly, watching it all unfold. Then Diane doubled down. "This is a conspiracy. You all just want to steal what's mine. I was the one who cared for Mom." My uncle suddenly laughed bitterly. "You cared for her? You mean you locked her in a back room and treated her like a burden?" Diane turned angry. "I was the only one there because you wouldn't let anyone visit her," she argued. "You always had an excuse. Oh, she's resting. Oh, she's not feeling well, but you were isolating her so no one would find out." She looked twisted in anger. That's not true. Actually, it is, I said quietly, surprising even myself. Diane glared at me. What do you know? I slowly stood up, my heart pounding. I know that Grandma called me 3 weeks before she died. Diane's eyes widened. What? Yeah, I said steadily. She called me out of nowhere and said she was lucky because you were out running errands and had time to talk. And she told me something. Diane stayed silent. She told me she was scared of you. My mom gasped. My uncle's hands clenched, and my cousins looked at Diane with horror and disgust. Diane shook her head quickly. No, she didn't. Did I? I interrupted. You were taking her money, she accused. She wasn't allowed to leave the house without you, and you yelled at her when she asked about her own bank account. Diane froze, her breathing shallow, eyes darting toward the door as if she wanted to run away. Then Mr. Calloway cleared his throat again. This is exactly why we're not finished. Diane snapped. What are you talking about? Mr. Calloway took out a thicker folder. He opened it, adjusted his glasses, and began reading. Before her death, your mother told me she was worried about financial abuse. She asked for a full audit of her accounts, and we discovered tens of thousands of dollars missing. The shock on Diane's face was clear. Lies, Diane whispered. Mr. Calloway continued calmly. At first, we thought she misplaced the funds, but then we found several transfers going directly to, can you guess? Silence. Then my uncle said quietly, Diane? Mr. Calloway nodded. That's right. The small withdrawals started at $500, then $1,000, and over 2 years, they added up to nearly $80,000 taken from your mother's savings. 2 of 2. Someone muttered a curse under their breath. Diane's hands were trembling. No, she told me to take that money, didn't she? Mr. Calloway asked, tilting his head, because we have something else. He took another piece of paper from the folder and slid it toward Diane. She didn't reach for it. I leaned over and read the heading. It was a police report. My stomach sank. Your mother filed this report 2 weeks before she died, Mr. Calloway explained. She said she believed you were stealing from her, that you had access to her debit cards, and that you were even forging her signature on checks. She even listed specific dates and transactions. Diane's mouth dropped open, but she couldn't say a word. Then Mr. Calloway flipped to the next page. We also have bank security footage showing that you made those withdrawals. Diane stepped back, then another step. Her hands trembled so much that she had to clench them into fists to try to stop it. This is ridiculous, she finally managed to say. You can't prove. Actually, we can, and we have, Mr. Calloway interrupted, raising his hand. As of this morning, the police have reopened the case. Diane froze. A heavy silence filled the room. Then a loud knock came at the office door. I felt like the air was leaving my lungs. Mr. Calloway didn't seem surprised at all. He simply sighed, closed the folder, and said, right on time. The door opened, and 2 police officers in uniform walked in. Diane's breath caught. Miss Diane Reynolds, one officer said. When she didn't answer, he continued, you're under arrest for financial exploitation, elder abuse, and fraud. In that moment, the woman who had acted like she ruled the room, the one who believed she had outsmarted everyone, was handcuffed in front of us. She began screaming, cursing, and struggling against the officers, but nothing could stop them. As they led her out, her face twisted in rage and her voice hoarse from screaming. I remembered what my grandmother had said in her video, greed will get you nowhere. And now, Diane was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Diane's screams echoed down the hall as the officers took her away. The rest of us sat in stunned silence, watching her world fall apart. For years, she had controlled everything, Grandma's house, her money, even who could see her. She had isolated, manipulated, and stolen from Grandma, and now, she was being taken away like a common criminal. But the story wasn't over. Just when I thought we could finally breathe again, Mr. Calloway cleared his throat once more. There's one more thing. I looked at him, my stomach tightening. Diane's gone, the police have taken her. What else could there be? My mom wiped her eyes and whispered, please. Mr. Calloway sighed. I wish that were the case, but I need you all to see something. He opened another folder and pulled out a thick stack of old documents with yellowed edges. Then he dropped them on the table. The title on the top made my heart stop. Deed to property, transfer of ownership. My uncle leaned forward, squinting. What the hell is this? Mr. Calloway slid the papers toward us. This is proof that your grandmother never really owned her house." We were all silent. The words didn't make sense at first. "What do you mean?" I asked softly. He folded his hands and explained. "Technically, your grandmother never owned the house completely. It was in her parents' name when she lived there. When they died, she took it over, but the transfer was never finalized. The deed was never officially recorded." The room's mood changed. My uncle's face darkened. "So what does that mean?" Mr. Calloway took a deep breath. "It means that when your grandmother was paying off her mortgage all those years ago, the house still legally belonged to the bank." My mom clutched her chest. No, that can't be. She paid for everything. That was her home." "It was her home," Mr. Calloway agreed, "but not on paper." Then he pulled out one more document, a foreclosure notice, dated just 2 weeks ago. My eyes blurred as I read the words. "What does this mean?" I asked. Mr. Calloway's face was grave. "It means that while we were busy with Diane's fraud, the bank was finalizing their claim on the house. The house isn't part of the estate." My mom gasped. "Are you saying the bank is going to take it?" He sighed. "Not yet, but if we don't act fast, they will." My uncle slammed his fist on the table. "Jesus Christ, first Diane, now this." I swallowed hard. "What can we do?" Mr. Calloway hesitated before saying, "We have 2 options. Option 1, we challenge it in court by gathering every document and receipt related to your grandmother's payments. But that could take years with no guarantee of winning. Option 2, my mom whispered. He looked at us carefully, "You buy the house at market value." My uncle cursed. "That's not an option. You just said Diane drained $80,000 from mom's accounts. We don't have that kind of money." A heavy silence fell over the room. I thought that was it. We were about to lose the house that Grandma had worked her whole life for. Then I remembered something. "Wait," I said, sitting up. "What about Diane?" Mr. Calloway frowned. "What about her?" I turned to my mom and uncle, my mind racing. "Diane stole money, right? And the police are charging her. If she's convicted, we can go after her assets." My uncle's eyes widened. "Holy." My mom blinked. "Are you saying?" I nodded. "We sue her. We take back every cent she stole. And if she spent it, we can seize her other assets, her house, her car, her jewelry, and her retirement fund." Mr. Calloway added. "She was funneling money into her own things using your grandmother's accounts." "That's it," my uncle said. "We're going to use Diane's stolen money to buy back Grandma's house." Mr. Calloway nodded. "If we act fast." "Yes," my mom exhaled shakily, then laughed through her tears. "Poetic justice." I smirked. Grandma would love this. And she would, because in the end, Diane didn't just lose, she lost everything. Diane thought she could steal everything from us, cheat and lie, and end up rich while the rest of us got nothing. She was wrong. Once we realized we could recover her stolen money, things moved quickly. My uncle and mom hired a lawyer immediately, and we sued Diane for every penny she stole, with the forged checks, bank records, and the video will. The case against her was rock solid. The prosecution was relentless, and within 3 months, Diane was convicted of elder abuse, financial fraud, and theft. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison, 6 long years in a small cell, eating stale food, wearing an ugly orange jumpsuit. But that wasn't the end. After her conviction, we filed another lawsuit to recover all the money she stole, and we won. Diane was ordered to repay every dollar plus damages, since she had spent most of the money on herself, expensive clothes, fancy handbags, spa trips, and other unnecessary things. If she couldn't pay, her assets would be taken. And oh, did she have assets? Her house? Gone, sold at auction. Her car? Repossessed. Her jewelry? Pawned. Her retirement savings? Drained to pay us back. Diane went from living large and acting superior to sleeping on a prison cot with nothing. Meanwhile, we used the money recovered from her to buy back Grandma's house, the very house Diane had tried to steal. The day we signed the final papers, my mom cried. My uncle hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. We walked through the house, touching the furniture, the walls, the kitchen counters, every place Grandma had lived. We still had one more thing to do. We had saved one final act of revenge for Diane. Diane still had one last possession, her storage unit. Before she went to prison, she rented a storage space filled with things she thought she could hide, designer bags, expensive shoes, personal documents, everything. But she was too careless. When she didn't pay the rental fee, the storage unit was taken over, and since my cousin knew the manager, We made sure Diane's storage unit was sold at a public auction for almost nothing. Every last treasure of hers was gone. The best part? Diane was in prison and didn't know what had happened until it was too late. When she found out, she screamed and threatened to sue us from prison, but that was laughable since she was broke. There was nothing she could do. She stole from her own mother, destroyed the will, and tried to steal from the whole family, and in the end, she lost everything. We got the house, we got justice, and Diane? She got exactly what she deserved. Grandma always said that greed will get you nowhere, and now, Diane had nowhere to go. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe for more great stories. Don't forget to tap the notification bell, so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments, we love hearing from you. See you next time, and take care.